What if the Nerevarine failed? What if Dagoth won? What if Dagoth was able to spread the divine disease to pretty much every corner of Vardenfell? Maybe it hasn't made it to the mainland yet, but there's genuine concern in the Empire that it will.
How do you stop an inevitable infection like that?
Well, I suppose one answer to the question is just throw prisoners at the problem. There's no chance they'll be able to come back to the mainland because there's too much sea, or they'll maybe figure out an answer to the problem. It is their life after all. So, prisoner after prisoner was thrown into Vardenfell. Some were not prepared, some were very prepared, some thought they were prepared. But then one prisoner did succeed. This is that prisoner's story. Now, we may not be the prophesized Nerevarine and savior of Vardenfell, but we do start this game as a prisoner like you usually do. Today I will be playing a Nord because I feel like some of these bonuses can help. What I'm most concerned about is maxing out my health as soon as possible, and I really want some competence with a spear, and the Nord does have a decent starting bonus to spear. I'm trying to pick skills that will make me more self-sufficient. Things like armor will help me keep my equipment in top shape. Things like restoration, because I don't know when or where I'll find mages to buy spells from. So having a healing spell early on is going to be very valuable. But as usual, I'll be born under the sign of the Lady for that increased personality and increased endurance to get even closer to 100 endurance at level 1. I decide to use this basement room as my main base of operation throughout the entire game, because if you didn't see before, there is a gondolier on the dock in Sadianine, so getting back to Sadianine is not very difficult. There's a crafting system added by this mod. It's pretty useful early game. I don't think it's that useful in the later game, but I do use it a little bit. This mod also adds spell tomes, which are going to be very helpful. When I make it to Celis Gravius, he tells us that we need to go to Telfyr and talk to Diviathfyr in order to figure out if there's a way we can combat this infection. Notice that a small area has been cordoned off in between the buildings in Sadianine. First things first is I steal as many things as I can. I can also go ahead and sell the things that I don't need to Arel here. He's in the warehouse rather than in his store. But this is what to expect. There are a lot of Corpus victims here. I managed to make it out, and I start looting the rocks and trees and grasses around the area. This was added with the crafting system. I want to try to make myself a weapon, first and foremost. Since Arel doesn't sell any weapons, my first weapon is going to have to be something that I either find myself or make, and it's going to be a lot easier to just make myself a weapon. The first weapon that I make is a flint spear. Now that I have my spear, I can stand on top of the fortifications in Sadianine and start training. I don't really have that much risk of being attacked back, but I can take a little bit of damage. While I'm sitting here, I'm going to start introducing some of these enemies as we fight them. There's really only been two. First, the enemies that look like Corpus Stalkers. They're actually called Corpus Walkers. They're a lot weaker, and they will drop your classic Corpus Weepings.
The second type of enemy is the Corpus Imperial Guardian.
These are infected Imperial Guards, and they drop their Corpus Weepings as well as crafting materials.
I'll continue to introduce new enemies as we find them because there are several that the mod introduces. From on top of this palisade, I have a distinct advantage with my spear.
Although sometimes the enemies decide to mill away from me. They do have quite a bit of health regen, but they actually get stuck on each other more frequently than you'd expect, and them getting stuck on each other really helps me take them out. You might notice that my spear's durability is getting a little low, and I really don't have a way of purchasing repair hammers, but I know that I can craft them.
So once my spear gets low, I can make some flint repair hammers and I can fix my spear. It might take a few tries, but this will help me level my armorer skill as well as keep my gear in good condition. So now that my spear is fixed, I can go right back to it and continue fighting. It's really less of a fight and more of just a one-sided war of attrition, but you know what? It works. I eventually finish slaying the last of the Corpus monsters in the area of Sedinin, and I take my first level. Most of my levels are going to look like that, by the way. I decided to do the 5-5-1, where I do 5 points in each of 2 stats, followed by 1 point of luck. I decided to try my luck and just go into houses, realized that the houses that were unlocked are probably a bad idea. That meant there was a living person in there in the base game, and now there are a bunch of zombies. So that's bad. But if I go into houses that are normally locked, they're empty. I can feel free to loot them to my heart's content here. You'll notice that even though I cleared out all of the zombies once, they're back. That's part of the mechanics of this game. Enemies will respawn after 3 days if their body is not cleared, and if their body is cleared, they will respawn much faster. So I don't bother clearing their bodies. After clearing out the village the second time, I find a nice piece of random loot. This random loot is added by one of the mods associated with the zombie mod. It uses some of the same naming formula as the items that drop in Diablo 2 as random magic loot, and some of the uniques are also included. I of course make a stop to see Teriel, because I'll be able to put those Scrolls of Icarian Flight to use at some point. I found this spot is a pretty good one to train acrobatics. You can kind of wedge yourself underneath the roof on top of the stairs and just mash the jump button. After clearing the town, I go into Arel's trade house and we find the Corpus Brute. Similar to the lame Corpus, they also drop Corpus Weepings and are very strong. I give it a few good tries. I can always leave and heal, but I need to not be on the ground in order to do that. But I slowly clear out Arel's trade house as best I can. I find my first piece of unique loot based off one of the Diablo 2 items here in Saracen's Chance. Here's 2 new enemy types, actually. These are the Corpus Guardians. They also look like this, but they drop crafting materials, namely bone meal and resin. As we look to the right of these Corpus Guardians, we see a Corpus Mage. There are 5 different varieties of this mage. You'll notice that this one has green robes. This one casts poison spells. There's another variant with blue robes. They cast frost spells. Then a version with red. They cast fire spells. One with purple that casts pure magic spells. And then another more different shade of blue. They cast lightning spells. These mages normally drop a robe, potions, soul gems, scrolls. Instead of having a scroll, you can also get lucky and have a spell tome drop instead. And usually they have a small amount of money on their body as well. So I play it really safe. I just try to stay far away and get the mage casting at a corner before advancing and finishing him off. And I continue my training montage of jumping into a corner for a few more levels. The nice thing is that I can get endurance up by using my spear skill, and having strength early on is good. But at this point, I really want to see where this gondolier can take me exactly, so I take a little bit of time to travel around to the different destinations that I can quick travel to. From Sedinin, we can go to the Vivec Foreign Quarter Canton, Molegmar, or an area in the Bitter Coast region. This area in the Bitter Coast region is actually a shack that exists in the base game. I think the mod author intended for the player to use this as sort of their home base, but I figured if I'm traveling by gondolier anyway, then I can just head to Sedinin instead of this area. I'll head back to Sedinin and then go over to Vivec just to see what's going on here. I don't know what I was expecting. I think some of the NPCs in Sedinin mentioned that maybe there were still survivors in Vivec, so I thought, oh, maybe I can find some new shopkeepers, or some people that can offer me training, or just general advice, but I found exactly what I probably should have expected in the first place here. Just more zombies. I make my way up into the wasteworks to see what's going on. Once again, the area is packed to the gills with undead. And I run into a new enemy. It looks like an infected ordinator. They're called Corpus Blasphemers. These enemies drop quite a bit of good stuff. They drop bone meal and resin, kind of like the Corpus Guardians do, as well as a spell book, which is super handy because you get a lot of spells off of enemies in this game rather than buying them from merchants. And they drop gold scraps. I couldn't really figure out what to do with the gold scraps other than make gold ingots and sell them, but maybe higher level heavy armors needed them. I'm thinking about the way ebony armor looks and thinking maybe it wants you to use gold bars to kind of explain the gold trim on ebony armor. But I'm in a big hallway and there's a lot of enemies. When I get low, I can leave and heal if I have the chance, if I don't just die, but it's very effective. I walk into a bar expecting to find not a horde of zombies, but once again, why would I think that there wouldn't be a horde of zombies? I do surprisingly find a shop that is unaffected by the plague. I think this is a plugin from Bethesda itself, and it wasn't accounted for when the mod was made. After this, I also noticed that the gondoliers have a barter option. They can buy some of your things, but I need to focus more on leveling up. Not only does Sadianine have some safe spaces and some NPCs that will barter with you, there are also a few people that will train you, and I'm going to take advantage of that while I can. I've been making a lot of money just selling random stuff. Continuing just general exploration, seeing where I can go, I head over to Molag Mar to see what's new there. The gondolier is sort of in the middle of the lake that Molag Mar is placed in, and as one would expect, there are a ton of zombies here. However, when you make your way up to the top of the canton, you'll notice a barricade. There are actually survivors here in Molag Mar. My suspicion is that because the Buoyant Armingers sort of headquarter in Molag Mar, they were able to stave off the infection pretty effectively. More so than the Ordinators, I guess. Speaking of the Buoyant Armingers, I can go into their barracks. I remember there being several pretty decent things here, and there's a new enemy, a Corpus Arminger. These Corpus Armingers are, as hinted, infected versions of the Buoyant Arminger. There's another graphic for them where they have their glass helm on rather than their chitin mask, but both have the same drop table. Raw glass scraps and usually a spell tome. Now at this point, I'm not quite strong enough and I keep dying, so I figure it's probably best to just pack up and try again another time. I head back to the gondolier to see what other locations I can travel to from Molag Mar, and I notice one option is Telfir. And this is where I'm meant to be going, so I figured why not? I approach Divythfur, and I give him the artifact that I'm meant to give him. In this case, it's a schematic of some sort, but despite giving him the bribe, essentially, to get him to help, he doesn't think that we're ready for this particular mission. So he tells us to go get stronger and come back again later. From Telfir, I can head over to Sadrith Mora. I don't really know what I was expecting to find in Sadrith Mora other than just continuing my circuit around Vardenfell to see what locations are available. I think I wanted to check on the Wolverine Hall for whatever reason. I also really don't know what I expected walking into a room that I knew was full of mages, and were probably all infected. As I continue getting levels, there's a couple other things that I want. I wanted to be able to make a kiln, which acts as sort of a smithy, and allows you to craft better weapons. I was able to craft the flint spear because it's basically just a piece of flint tied to the end of a stick. I was missing charcoal for the longest time, and on a whim I decided to look at a tree near Molag Mar, and it happened to have charcoal on it. And there's my kiln. Once the kiln is set up, I can start to take all of my metal scraps and form them into ingots for later use, should I decide to make armor or weapons out of them. After taking some time and getting another level, I decide it might be a good idea to find myself a piece of armor that I can't actually make. There are two pieces of heavy armor tied for the highest armor rating in the game, the first being the Lord's Mail. I saw the tunnel leading under Emmenhart and I couldn't resist. I had to check. Was this NPC that drops the Lord's Mail still alive? Could I defeat him and take the Lord's Mail for myself? Well, the answer to both of those questions is yes. He somehow survived the Corpus infestation, and he still has his armor. This NPC puts up quite a good fight. Nothing my spear can't handle, since I can attack from nearly twice as far away as he can. And he'll eventually go down. And there's the Lord's Mail. I'm going to continue further south to get to the area Mudan Grotto. Within Mudan Grotto lies an ancient dwarven ruin, and all the way on the top floor there is a closet that contains the dragon bone mail. This piece of armor is very good, for me especially, because as a Nord, I already resist cold 100%. The 100% resist fire effect from the dragon bone cuirass should be very good. I'll have immunity to 2 of the 3 elements. Well, 2 of the 4 if you count poison. Now, Mudan Grotto was also a dwarven ruin, so I find a dwarven halberd as loot there. It's a lot better than the spear that I was using before. Time for another exciting, unique find from the Diablo 2 loot, Mara's Kaleidoscope. I could never get one in the game, so of course I'd find it in a different game. Moving through Vivec more, because I didn't actually check the plaza in the Foreign Quarter to see if there were any survivors. I go into the Fighters Guild, and in the basement of the Fighters Guild, I find a Corpus Orc Beast. These are a little bit stronger than the Corpus Brutes, but they're fairly similar in terms of general shape and damage output. I make my way back to Sejanine to do business with Arel and do a little bit more leveling. I decide it's time to go back to Molagmar and try ousting the Corpus monsters from the Buoyant Arminger headquarters, just for fun. From Margan, I head over to, apparently, the Ahumusa camp. You can go to some of the Ashlander camps by boat. The next stop from the Ahumusa camp can either be Dagon Fell or the Ursulaku camp. I choose to ignore Dagon Fell for now. I'm going to make my way to the Dunmer stronghold that I know is near the Ursulaku camp. Normally, it has a bunch of hostile orc NPCs in it, as well as in the Propylan chamber, the master trainer for alchemy. And that is reflected by a load of Corpus Orc beasts. Outside, though, you probably see this pink enemy. It's called a Corpus Orc Sorcerer. That was the only time I saw this enemy, which is why it didn't get like a little intro screen, because I don't know if that was just a one-time thing or if they even have standardized drops or what, because like I said, I only killed one of them the entire playthrough. Unfortunately, the Master Alchemy Trainer is also not present and is replaced with a Corpus Beast. One helpful service in the Ashlander camps is that the Wise Women are spellmakers, so I can make some magic training spells. This way I can sell things to Arel without too much effort. I can just go ahead and spam spells and then wait for 24 hours to get my mana back, as well as Arel's gold will also restock. That way you can get 2 things done at once. You get some money and you get magic experience. Near this point, I'm also able to take level 15. After this level, I also decided that I was very ready to just start wandering around in the Vardenfell Wastes, so that's what I did. One of the closer towns to Sedanine is Pelagiad. That was my first stop. I wanted to see how Pelagiad had been changed, and the answer is there's a lot of zombies everywhere, as the answer has been. While I was looting through one of the houses, I managed to find a Dwarf Star ring. Very nice. I don't need the resist fire on it, but the spell absorb should be nice on it. Not a high spell absorb chance, but it's still there. Upon entering the tavern in Pelagiad, I run into another new enemy type. This is the Corpus Ravager. The Corpus Ravager uses the same model and attack set that the Draugr out of the Blood Moon expansion use. They also only drop Corpus Sweepings. They have an attack that hits you before the animation goes off, so that's something to be careful of. So despite the fact they're quite difficult to kill, they don't drop very good loot to back it up. In the fort proper, we encounter our first frenzied variety of a Corpus Beast, this one being the Frenzied Corpus Imperial Guardian. There's other frenzied Corpus enemies as well. For example, there's a Frenzied Corpus Guardian. Again, just a little bit stronger. As for what they drop, it's usually just whatever the base form dropped, plus a little bit on top. After another level, I remember that I forgot to go up to Dagon Fell, so I make my way that direction. There is a tomb in this area where I can find the Ring of Finaster, which adds some very nice resistances onto my kit. I can also pay Sorkvild the Raven a visit, assuming he's still alive, which it turns out he is.
This is too easy.
But from there, I can also run through Dagon Fell itself and loot some stuff from it. There's really not anything that's going to help me all that much, except for a set of Daedric Greaves. After this, I can continue farming for levels between spamming magic in front of Arel and going over to Molag Mar to get training. I can get quite a few levels. I decide I want to see what else is around, so I head over to Caldera to see if there are any survivors there. And to no one's surprise, since this is a zombie apocalypse, there are no survivors in Caldera, except for a certain scamp in a certain manner. Somehow he's still kicking around. I don't really understand how, especially because he's surrounded by a bunch of Corpus Orc beasts. But here's Creeper, ready to buy all of my potions, weapons, and armor. So if I need a little bit more money a little bit faster, I can make my way down to Caldera, and I wanted to see if one of my favorite items in the game was still here, and I am charged by an enemy from nearly off screen. It's a Corpus athlete that is holding the Boots of Blinding Speed. Pretty fun concept because that thing just came out of nowhere. Leaving Caldera to the north also lets me make my way over to Ald'ruhn. Was hoping there might be some survivors in Ald'ruhn, but there's a bunch of zombies everywhere. But I did go under Scar in order to determine how the Redoran leaders fared, and, well, it's not good. But I run into another new enemy type. These are Corpus Knights. They're very strong melee combatants because they have ebony armor and ebony weapons. They can also cast spells from a range. Here's what they drop. They usually drop ebony scraps, as well as some other crafting components, and they'll drop a spell book. After finishing off the Knights, I use a Divine Intervention scroll to see where it will put me, which, as I expected, it was Fort Buckmouth, but there are actually people here, and that's really cool. Unfortunately, the people are being assaulted by zombies right now as I loaded in, but hey, there's survivors here. If there's survivors here, I might be able to do business. I might be able to train with some NPCs here. It's just a good sign to have more NPCs around because I'm more likely to be able to do the things that I want to do to help me level up faster. Now that I'm a higher level, I head over to Telfir to see if Diviath will tell me what's going on. Luckily, at level 21, I am a high enough level, quote-unquote, to start the main quest, and Diviath will inform me that we need to get our hands on Wraithguard. Vivec has Wraithguard, so we need to go kill Vivec. Without anything left to do for the main quest other than to head to Vivec, well, that's exactly what I do. I head over to Vivec. There are a lot of zombies throughout the main streets of Vivec, but I also ran into a surprising enemy attack. These are not Corpus beasts. These are actual people. As such, they have real gear, and glass is kind of good, as you can guess. They even have all the things they should have in their pockets as a buoyant armiger. I guess this is Vivec's last honor guard, because here's a third enemy as well. Her arrows hurt a lot. She is a lot weaker than the other two enemies that I just fought. Let's find out why that bow is doing so much damage. Aha, it's actually Auriel's bow. Got it. After defeating Vivec's guards, we're ready to break into Vivec's palace, and he doesn't want to talk to us, which is really annoying. Vivec, it would save us so much time if you just talk to me, but that's okay. You don't have to, I guess. I am just a prisoner after all. The strategy for taking out Vivec will always be find somewhere you can stand where his spells just hit a wall, or really just not you, because those spells hurt quite a bit. We might get hit a few times by errant spells. So we'll just kind of circle around Vivek until he finds a torch to get stuck behind or something like that. That way he can't really threaten with damage at all. But it's really not very difficult. Once Vivek is defeated, we can grab Wraithguard, and then we can take it up to Diviath Fur to make sure it is the real Wraithguard. And Diviath will remind us to go see the dwarf in the basement to see if he can restore the enchantments on Wraithguard. He says that he probably could, but he's going to need some reading material before he can do that. And that's okay, because we're pretty good at fetching. There's a few other things I want to get before I actually start initiating the endgame. I want to see if there are any NPCs that are still alive. I thought, oh, well, maybe in Tel Voss there would be somebody living, because it's hard to get up there. I do run into another new enemy. This is a Corpus Telvanni Guardian. They usually drop a few things like the buoyant armigers, like the glass and books, and maybe a few scrolls or potions. But then I can make my way up to Master Arion's tower to see if he's home. He is not home. This place has also been overrun by goblins. We can find the true fate of Master Arion, as it looks like he has become one of the Corpus Telvanni Guardians himself. Once I find out Master Arion's fate, I'm prepared to go into Ghostgate for the first time in order to retrieve Kagernak's tools, as well as Kagernak's journal and Kagernak's plan book. There's a small group of Corpus creatures outside of Ghostgate, and there is a massive force of Corpus creatures inside of Ghostgate. This is going to be a long ordeal. But we can skip through that, because these are just a bunch of trash mobs, essentially. In Ghostgate, my first stop is Ordrasol. This is where I can get Keening, and I decide to defeat the ash vampires that are in these ruins guarding the things that I need, just because they have cool drops. I really like the amulets and the rings they drop, as well as the couple belts. I usually display them somewhere since they're unique. Keening is the first thing I need. And on my way to the next destination, I find my first spear upgrade since the halberd in Mudan. Following Odrasol, I make my way to Tervinial. This is where one of the books that I need is going to be found. And we can grab Kagernak's plan book. So we're already half done with Ghostgate. On the way to my next location, I find another Diablo 2 random unique item, the Headhunter's Glory, and it's much better than the shield that I currently have equipped. I also found a glass halberd, and this is going to be one of my favorite items to use for the rest of the run. One more item that I find on the way is the Giant Skull. Doesn't do a lot in Morrowind, but it does enough for it to be good. Fortifying Strength is just nice to have. I take a small detour into Kagurun, since the exit is within Ghost Fence, and I kill another ash vampire. There's really no reason for me to do this other than to continue collecting the items they drop. Here we are finally at Vermenial, the third destination. My health looks really low, but the fact that I have a spear with range on it, it's really difficult to get hit. But there's Sunder in the bag. I also pick up the Amulet of Hearthheal, which gives me Levitate, and I can easily make my way to Terrenulol and defeat the Ash Vampire there. But with these 4 things gathered, I can head back. I asked Yagrim if he can restore the enchantments, but he says he needs a little bit of time in order to reactivate them, and to come back in a day. While I wait, I sell some things at a rel and level up, and Wraithguard is given to me. One of the mods I downloaded did fix the bug where it sucks out your max health rather than your current health for equipping the jury-rigged Wraithguard, so we can head back to Dagoth Citadel, defeat the last Ash Vampire in Red Mountain, and then fight Dagoth himself.
Dagoth welcomes you.
Before taking on Dagoth's final form and destroying the heart of Lorkhan, I wanted to check around some different locations. I found a surprising living person on Dren's plantation just up in one of the guard towers. Didn't see that coming because everyone else on that plantation is a zombie. After that, I made my way over to Nissus just to see how that town fared. Again, spoiler alert, not well. Nothing is doing well. Vardenfell is on fire. Everyone is dead. Everything is terrible. I had a little side goal here before I killed Dagoth to find the String of Ears, because that is one of the better belts in Diablo for a lot of melee builds. I had this little side goal here to find the String of Ears, which is one of the better belts in Diablo 2 for melee characters, and I wanted to see how it translated over to Morrowind. Within the temple, though, after defeating one of the Corpus mages, they dropped a Sparking Mail, which not very many abilities on it, but it's kind of cool. I put it on for a little while, but I think the armor that I had on was better. I find a few frenzied Corpus blasphemers upstairs guarding the mask. I wanted to see if I could take the Ash Mask and just use it in my inventory to cure my blight or common diseases, but that's not a thing that worked. Moving on, I checked on Baldus, and despite the fact the door was locked, he was not saved from the fate of the others. In Narmok, I also discovered another unique shield, the Wall of the Eyeless. This is another shield that looks pretty cool in Diablo 2, but it's pretty well shown up by other items of the same level. I make my way over to the Foreign Quarter to check on Gentleman Jim Stacy. Jimmy Boy is not doing well. He is one of these cool Corpus athlete type monsters. It looks like he has some kind of reflect spell ability going on, but once he's killed, he drops the skeleton key like he usually does, so that's cool that the skeleton key is still in the mod. It's just on a different NPC rather than Jim Stacy himself. It's the monster that has taken his place. When walking into the Arena Wasteworks to get to the Morag Tong, this happened. There's a torch that's blocking their spells, and they just keep throwing them, even though they are in the blast radius of their own spells, so it's kind of funny that they're hurting themselves more than they're hurting me. I make my way through the Morag Tong Guild Hall here in Vivec with nothing really that interesting until I run into a unique looking creature at the end. There is a Corpus Orc Arminger as well as the normal Corpus Armingers. This is the only one that I saw on this playthrough, although when I went to take B-roll, I did find another one. And while searching through sacks, I find another unique item from Diablo 2, Dragon Scale. It is a shield, and gave it some cool fire-based effects. Since I have checked on a lot of the other faction leader locations, I decided to stop by Crassus Curio's Manor in the Hlalu district to see what has become of him. He didn't even have a named Corpus creature in his stead, and neither did Drambaro. In a similar vein, I am here in Sadrith Mora to check on Master Naloth to see if he's been infected. He did become a zombie, but he retained his name. So that's interesting because that didn't happen with a lot of other NPCs. I make my way to Tel Arun to check on Master Gothrin to see if that happened to him as well. And it, in fact, does seem like Gothrin has been infected. Though, even though he is hostile, the Dremora that flank him are not. I would have thought the Dremora would have done a better job protecting their captor, but apparently not. Next stop is Telmora to check on Mistress Drotha. And she has become Master Drotha, which is interesting. And I've had about enough of this, so I recall back to Dagoth Ur's chambers.
What a fool you are. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. How could you be so naive? There is no escape. No recall or intervention can work in this place. Come, lay down your weapons. It is not too late for my mercy.
Same strategy as always. Get Dagoth Ur to teleport down, levitate off the edge, try to get him to fall. Get him to fall. And with that out of the way, and nothing to slow us down, we can destroy the Heart of Lorkhan.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Fool! Stop! This is the end. The bitter, bitter end.
And the amulet is out of charge, so we run. And with that, our quest is over, beating Morrowind if Dagoth Ur won. This is the end of the video. You're probably wondering why I skipped over Tel Brenor earlier. I actually found Night Smoke, which is a different belt from Diablo 2. I did not find String of Ears, which is sad, but that's okay. I can always come back to this later. I'm thinking about maybe playing this mod on stream. It adds a lot of difficulty, and it's pretty fun. But if you're here watching it this far, I'd like to thank you for being here and watching. This was a really fun run. This mod is excellent. It's really less of one mod and more like a conglomeration of mods stuck together that really changed the experience of Morrowind. So I definitely say it's worth giving this mod a try. Something funny about Tel Brenor that you're going to see here in a second is that everyone else is turned, but when we go upstairs into Mistress Thorana's chambers, everyone up there is fine, I guess. I don't understand why everyone else in all the other Telvanni towers have been turned already and Mistress Thorana hasn't. Maybe it's the proximity to Ghostgate combined with it being difficult to get up into the tower that protected these people. I'm not sure. Whatever. It's also possible the mod creator just forgot to implement changes in Thorana's tower. Maybe my files didn't read correctly. It doesn't matter. It's kind of cool that there are some living real people here, because one of these spell vendors is like the best spell vendor in the game, and the other guy sells some potions, I guess. But that will be it for this video. Once again, thanks for watching. If this is a video that you enjoyed, I'd appreciate you leaving a like on it. And if this is the kind of content you'd like to see more of, a subscription would also be appreciated. I do try to put out these videos every other week. This is sort of a 100 subscriber special. I tried to do the narration just a touch different. Kind of giving more of a story at the beginning. And hopefully that is enjoyable for my viewers. Once again, thanks for being here. Looking forward to putting out the next video, and I hope other people are as well. And
Is there something
I'll see you then. Goodbye.